All right, Madalina, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Let's start off. For everybody listening, Madalina here, she is amazing. She's working with Collibra. She's handling some really critical things for the company. So before I butcher what you do, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do at Collibra.
So a little bit about myself. I think of myself as a mission-driven technologist. About my role at Collibra, I'm the chief technology officer at Collibra. I've been in this position for 3 years, but again, like very important for me is that technology for a purpose. And from the very beginning, even before deciding to do computer science, I was fascinated about the potential of technology to solve some of the biggest problems. And
Right.
um, more by accident than having a very intentional path in terms of my career, I made choices that were aligned with that sentiment that technology is for a purpose. And I found myself a few years ago really looking at Collibra, who is trying to solve some of the big problems that we have right now. We have an explosion of data. The biggest companies out there have an incomprehensible amount of data coming every
Right.
single day. And everybody's trying to make sense of their data. And we are trying to make sense of all the data that assaults us. Can you imagine how that is for the biggest companies? Collibra is the largest SaaS provider for data intelligence solutions. We do have a platform that covers all kind of data solutions, from cataloging and governing your data to lineage, data quality, privacy, you name it. And it's particularly exciting for us right now with AI and how that's changing everything that is done in this space and how data is used and what is used for, but also really just taking this idea of governing data to governing for AI and AI governance.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool because you brought up like everybody knows like, and especially in the last decade, right? We've been saying data is the new oil, and but in the recently in the last few years, we have figured out how to tap into that oil and pipe it out and turn that into something, right? And it's exciting. And 4 months ago, when I was talking to you, AI was at a different journey. We were at a different point, and in 4 months, there have been so many things that have happened. That's like we
I was
just have
actually
to,
thinking, because when we spoke about this first time,
yeah,
there was something there, but I feel like it's almost good that we waited with
yeah.
this by chance, because I feel like so much has changed and it's changing so fast. It's almost every day it's something new, and we've never
It's
been in
insane.
such an accelerated reality in tech.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. This is the fastest I have seen things change. And I keep in touch with most of the things that happen. Like I've written my own agent that scours and scrapes the internet and summarizes the latest information. And what I'm seeing every day is that agent fails actually. You know why it's failing is because when it tries to like scrape everything and put that into a JSON and tries to load it, it fails to load because there's like a
It's
threshold
just too
there.
much
It
data.
times out. Yeah, it times out, and it's insane about the way things have changed. But anyways, I really am excited to talk to you about all the amazing things that you have been doing. But you've had a fascinating career. I was just going through your LinkedIn, just reminding myself you've worked at Medidata for 15 years, which is something that we should get into a little bit. But tell me a little bit about your early career. How did a young Madalena decide to like, hey, this is what I want to do? What inspired you to get into tech?
Uh, you know, um, Given where we are, a lot of people are curious about how I did it, because there is this assumptions that you have this grand plan and you're super committed and you execute on that grand plan. And as I was saying earlier, a lot of it feels by accident, but it's not really that much by accident as it's having a purpose and having that guide you. And my journey has been very zigzag. It's been sometimes really straight and sometimes going sidewise, but I had no plans to go into computer science.
Right.
I actually was preparing to go to an architecture school, like not software architecture, buildings architecture, and I spent a couple of years in high school going tutoring and everything related to learning about buildings and designing buildings. I was really fascinated by beautiful things. And I realized as I was going through that journey that I'm not really good at drawing. I can
Right.
be decent, I can be adequate, I can never be really, really good. And for me, it was, I have some skills, some undeniable skills. I've been pretty good at math, physics, science, always kind of ahead of my peer group. And there was this expectation that I'm going to do something with these skills. And I wanted to do something with those skills. And at that point, computers and internet and technology was kind of picking up, and it was the latest and newest thing. And everyone was saying, this is the future. And it's like,
Right.
okay, what do you need to get into the computer science schools, like math, physics? I can do this. So kind of went there, passed the exam. There's like super high competition in Bucharest at that time for computer science. Everyone wanted in, and I just got in, and I didn't even have a computer before going to college to do computer science, and
Wow.
I loved it. It was the
That's
right choice,
amazing.
but it was a very, very last moment choice. Mostly focused on what can I do that I can be good
It
at.
brings all these skills together. Like, that's amazing. Like, to know that somebody is a CTO today and chose this career and didn't have a computer to begin with, like, was just inspired to bring. It's a fascinating story. How was the computer scene when you, like, the science scene in Bucharest and Romania, when you started off? Was it like something that was picking up in the country? How was that for you?
I mean, it was emerging. I actually went, because of those skills that I had to recognize. I went to a technical high school. I had some, computer lab classes part of my high school education. So it's not that I saw a computer first time in
Right.
college. I just didn't have my own until then. Um, there was, by the time I finished college, there were a few companies, startups that were based in Bucharest and other big cities that were starting to get into a field, but was really, really small, just um, a lot of technical STEM educated people getting into
Gotcha.
it. So it was very,
That's
very
amazing.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to know how somebody starts a story, and I love to hear people's story because it inspires so many people who listen, who are on a different journey and different points in life. So thank you for sharing that. I was curious now to get into a little bit more about from there on. You've had a significant career. You spent almost 15 years at Medidata, starting as an engineer, and then you took some management roles. So tell us a little bit about those beginnings, and what kind of shaped your early part of the career.
Yeah, so I had no plan whatsoever to go into management.
Right.
Let's start there. I
Okay.
didn't have a great plan. For me, it was, hey, I want to pick a company or a role that where I can help with something that is important to me. And Medidata, I don't know how much of your audience knows about Medidata, but Medidata as the largest platform for clinical trials. So
Right.
a lot of the companies that are inventing new drugs and new medical technology are running the clinical trials on Medidata's platform. And back then, Medidata was actually really, really small. I was employee 247 or something like that. So
Wow.
not tiny small, but small comparatively. And they had a single product. It was the beginning of a big, great journey. I liked what they did. The skills required for the job aligned with what I was doing, and I applied and they got me. But of course, as I was saying, for me, it's always been technology for a purpose. So I was never really satisfied with just doing what was asked of me. I kind of started working around my scope and expanding it a bit and putting two and two together and coming up with ideas and proposals. And my then boss noticed that, I'm interested in that space and gave me a very um, unusual goal. It's like, this
Right.
is your year-end review is going to depend on you achieving this one thing. I need you to be known by one executive that you do not know. I need,
Mm.
when I go there and we do calibration or whatever, and I say your name, one of the people on the executive team should know who you are. And it's like, this is ridiculous. Like, no, who am I? Software engineer X on this corner of the floor speaking with executives. But,
Right.
I've always been good with challenges, and I don't even remember who I approached, but by the end of the year, they knew my name somehow.
Nice.
And it was just such an interesting revelation for me. I feel like ultimately it's been the single biggest differentiator for me, and I think could be for anyone that is doing technology for a purpose. Um, Realizing that being able to explain deeply technical topics to business folks is what's going to tremendously increase your ability to make an impact.
Hmm.
Because for many people, the ones that decide, the ones that deal with the money, the ones that make the business decisions, what gets done, what doesn't get done, technology is this black box. And they
Right.
understand about it something, but not enough to feel truly comfortable with making decisions. And if you're able to really just take something that is abstract and explain it to them in a way that they get it, your ability to impact is tremendous. And that's what I realized with that crazy goal. And I feel like it's been something that has continuously pushed me forward, because when I found
Right.
something that I cared about, I found a way to explain what I had in mind to the person that made the decision.
Yeah, no, that's amazing because when you were saying this, I have heard this from another person, exactly same, quote by quote, this idea that this is actually an art and not many people can do it, but there are few who have been gifted with this idea or this ability to look at a complex technical problem and know how that works, and then distill that, simplify that, and talk about it to non-technical people who also need to make decisions. So that's what you kind of discovered.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really that idea is like, and you're right, it's a gift, right? Like
Yeah.
being a technologist, often you're with you the hands and head and everything in technology, and you're not really thinking about people that don't get it in the same way you do. But for me, it was like the reality that I had that gift, but more importantly, that someone noticed and put two and two together and challenged me
Right.
to actually have that interaction. And how do you go as an engineer and speak with an exec that is not on the technology? You have to figure out how to explain to
Yeah.
them in a way that get it. So
Yeah.
it was a big interesting revelation for me.
Yeah, I've had those moments in my life where I have to do some things like this where I'm mostly on the business side of things, but I have a major withdrawal symptoms, like I need to code something. So how I compensate for that is either I will find a project or POC, work on it within the company, or I'll find something outside. But because I am also somebody who likes to be in these two worlds, but for some reason I have like major withdrawal symptoms. Like I do need to look at code and do some coding and things like that. So did you, as you moved up in management, did you continue to also like stay in top of technology, worked on tech, code level?
Most definitely in my career at Medidata, I was very, very close to the code and action, really all the way to the end of my career there.
Nice.
In part because I was the original engineer on a lot of the products that I ended up leading that became foundational for Medidata's platform. And I was still the one that knew all the skeletons in the closets and could trace back many of the decisions.
Right.
I I'm a little bit less close to the code at Collibra because a lot of the decision predates me, but also the tech stack is different than what I'm comfortable with as an
Yeah.
engineering. That's not to say that I'm not in Git looking at people's code more often than they are comfortable, and I'm not in Jira commenting on requirements more often
Right.
than everyone is comfortable. So maybe that's kind of how I deal with the withdrawal. I kind of
Yeah.
sometimes I get bored and I go really, really deep, and everyone is freaked out. It's like, what happened? It's like
Why
nothing,
are you
nothing. Just
looking at
like
Jira code?
why are you looking at Jira? Why are you looking at Git? What
Yeah,
happened? Why are
yeah.
you looking at logs? So
Yeah, but you
I do some
also
of that.
earned it, right? Like you've also earned it. You've been in the space, you're a veteran, you understand how this works. Now, as a chief technology officer, of course, your roles and the objective and the outcomes that you're driving is different from what you're doing as an engineer, right? So I wanted to dive into that a bit, but you brought up a great point about Collibra, the tech stack, and the tech stack that you have were working at Medidata. Tell us a little bit about how these two were different. What are the challenges that you were trying to solve from a technology point of view?
The part that is very, very similar between these two companies, and is not the same tech stack. Let's start there. The part that was very similar is that when I joined these companies, both of them were in their second decade of existence.
Hmm.
And when you're there and you work in the enterprise space, like the customer base for these two companies are like the largest companies out there, Global 500. Um, in 10 years, you've accumulated a lot of technology. There is no such thing as, hey, this is our tech stack. You
Right.
have build all kind of things. You've started when the norm was something, and then now the norm is different, and you continue to evolve and you continue to build things, and you have cacophony of technologies and patterns and whatnot. Also, both companies had, by the time I got there, a number of acquisitions, and when you acquire companies, you're going to have different stack for those companies. So I think the part that is very interesting for both of these companies is like, okay, what do you do with this? How do you evolve something that is very complex by the nature of just how the company got to be successful, but
Right.
also complex because the customers that you're dealing with are really complex and have needs that are difficult sometimes to get uniform and say, I'm building this and it's going to work for all the customers.
Right.
So in enterprise software, it's a little bit different. I think the part that was very interesting about Medidata is right as the cloud was becoming something that everyone was starting to look into and service-oriented architecture was becoming mainstream, the business needs of Medidata truly aligned with those architectural patterns. We wanted to start from to move from just electronic data capture and the one product that Medidata had to a platform. And we recognize that if you want to give something to the providers, the hospital, doctors and nurses, to work on multiple clinical trials across pharmas, you really need some of that multi-tenancy. You don't want them to take the same courses multiple times. You don't want them to have multiple logins. If they are going to use Medidata's software, they should log in once and see all their clinical trials. And if they are to be trained on Medidata's EDC module or whatever module, they should take the training once. So there was
Right.
this need for multi-tenancy, and then there was this potential of cloud. So it was just a fascinating moment where what was becoming like this gold star in terms of architecture really aligned with the business need. Now, fast forward to where we are now, a lot of these patterns have become mainstream, but I think we've lost a little bit of that. I don't know, the word is not coming to me. It's like that lean thinking to
Mm.
recognize that some of these patterns are really not just applicable in every single case,
Right. Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And if you start a project really planning for the most scalable, most architecturally beautiful thing, you're probably going to over design. You're going to have something
Oh,
super
for sure.
expensive, difficult to operate. And I think at Collibra, we have some of those needs, but because we are actually working across industries, across domains, there is very little of that repeatability that justifies multi-tenancy. A lot of multi-tenancy, it's around technical components more than just functional components. So technology decisions, in my mind, going back to what I said, I'm like a pragmatic, mission-driven technologist, are first about what does the customer need and what
Right.
is good for the business. It's not about asking, uh, can we do this? Yes, if you have a smart team of engineers, you can do anything. Like I've learned that.
Yeah,
I worked in a number of programming language. I can read more than I can write. Smart engineers can implement anything you throw at them.
for
It
sure.
doesn't mean that you should do it. It's like
Yeah.
the right question is not can we do it, is should we do it? Can we build a sustainable business model around it? Can we provide real value? And can we do it in commercially sensible ways? Like if we
Yeah.
spend tremendous amount of money to build it and to operate it, probably shouldn't build it.
Yeah, I mean, this is like such a extravagant, amazing response, right? You touched upon so many different ideas, and also I can see how you as a CTO are looking at things, right? When you come and build solutions. So when you were talking about metadata and the early cloud, right? I want to dissect this response of yours and kind of go at each of those. I'm curious, like, what was the cloud you guys first started exploring, and like, how did the solution?
We were early adopters of AWS,
Okay,
and for the longest time, we were like really just in lockstep with them. Like
got it.
they would just throw something in beta, and we would try it because we were like so absolutely amazed and fascinated by the potential there. Where I'm pretty sure that in some cases we overdid it because we got the
Yeah,
shiny object. It's like, oh, AWS is doing this, we probably should try it. But I think it was this also almost miraculous reality of the business needs and the advancements in technology really,
Yeah,
really
yeah.
matching. But yes, it was AWS. It was a great time where right now I feel like we have so many choices that we spend a great deal of time even trying to figure out what of the many choices we have. There weren't that many. And
Yeah, yeah.
AWS is pretty awesome. I'm a big fan of AWS as a technology organization.
The second part of what just from this I wanted to thread was you brought about, hey, we had this tendency to like take a solution and maybe overfit that solution, right? Like we do the same thing with data too sometimes. But you brought up a very good point, like that for every company, you don't really need to like start like by applying the over architecting it. And we have seen some examples, right? I don't know if you know about this. Amazon Prime completely changed the architecture to serverless, and then brought everything back to a monolithic architecture, like they went so so yeah, go ahead.
I knew that they were going to move to serverless and service-oriented architecture. I didn't realize they went back,
Oh
but
yeah,
I'm not surprised.
yeah,
Um, because even when you're the creator of these patterns and you've demonstrated again and again that they are good patterns, I think you need to have that realization sometimes that sometimes simple patterns, even
right,
though your engineers might say, oh, they're legacy and we're not modern, really the right thing to do.
for
And they are
sure.
going to find places and ways to be modern and innovate, but innovate in your space. Don't innovate in just for the sake of innovation.
Yeah, and I think the key is also like you've been in the space for a while. Like challenges keep changing, scale changes, user requirements change. And back in the day, like I don't know if like I joke about this in pretty much every podcast, is that something went down for a bit. Like if a server was down or something, the max you would get was an email saying service was down, and yeah, we are working on it. Now if something is down, you hear about it on Twitter, and it's like, and the CEO is involved, and everybody's like, what happened to this service? Why is so things have changed, paradigms have changed, and Collibra obviously has a pedigree in terms of what they've been doing. Like I was researching about the company, you have some great products around catalog and data governance, but what are your challenges like now? Of course, like from similar products, like what are you solving, at least priority wise right now?
Um, I mean, obviously, we have a large number of customers who are already using what we have. So for us, it's constantly about providing extra features in the areas that we are already pretty well established. Um, Scale, obviously, there is always that one customer that is ramping up faster than we anticipated. And, when people freak out about scale, I really like to reference Dr. Vogel, who's saying that, scale breaks everything. And instead of thinking it as a problem, you really just embrace it as, just a measure of how successful you are. Because
Yeah,
we all, try to think about scale and plan thinking like, okay, this is as large as this load is going to be or data set is going to be, and you plan for that. And when you exceed it, it's like, okay, we are more successful than we ever imagined that we are going to be in this area. This is good, people. Let's figure out
yeah,
how we fix it. So of course, as we grew and we got some of the really large companies out there use Collibra, we are really trying to figure out how we adjust to the tremendous amount of data, right? Metadata is a lot right now. We have just incomprehensible amount of data that these companies have. We only bring into our platform the metadata for that, and we are speaking about billions of assets and billions of pieces of information that have to go there to have a full landscape of what a company has and where. And sometimes those objects are pretty complex. So
yeah,
definitely trying to stay ahead of the needs of our customers is top of mind. But of course, AI has changed everything,
yeah,
and we are feeling pretty excited by how synergetic what we've built for managing data is with what's needed to do proper AI governance.
right.
And everybody's speaking. I don't know. I don't remember us discussing a few months ago about AI governance. I think it was just a
Very
tiny
early
topic
stage.
there.
Yeah,
But right now, everybody's speaking about AI governance. And as we started thinking about what does it even mean AI governance, you realize that for every company, it means something else. It ranges from, what AWS and GCP and Microsoft are doing with really trying to understand uh, the data observability and looking at those models, security, access control, whatever, from companies that just want a model repository and want to document all the use cases that they have because their customers or regulators are worried about AI being evil. So it's all over
Right.
the place. But
Yeah.
the reality is that it's both of these things. Like if you are to do AI governance right, you need to understand your model and ensure that the model is for a specific given purpose and you constantly validate that the model does what you intended it to do. But there is also that part of model combined with data that you use for training. And you need to
Right.
understand what data you're using, who's changing the data, who has access to the data, how the data was transformed. And these are all components that Collibra has. So we're like
Right.
tremendously excited about the possibility to not only just be part of this AI wave, but meaningfully influence how AI governance is done and
Yeah.
how the
And
future is
that's
going
a
to look.
and what you brought up is a very interesting point, right? For every enterprise, this is a different problem, and the way they look at this problem, especially what you said about looking at like a RAG system, right, where you have your own data and you have a large language model coming together and working. But you brought up a point that I was not thinking about. That is, hey, people are changing this data. So who changed what? Because what they change affects the overall result that the output will produce to
Right.
the user, and it's a fascinating problem to solve, and you guys are right in the middle of that.
But it's also, because we've already solved that for different purposes, like, big companies and just companies that use Collibra have always wanted to know for data sets that were particularly important for regulatory compliance or for business decision.
Right.
They've always wanted to know who has access to the data, who changes it. And now the same data products are used to train AI models. It's even more important if you're going to use AI with all the anxiety and paranoia around AI and the unknowns around AI. It's even
Yeah.
more important to have those sensors and to do it right. So I don't think that we can do meaningful AI governance without really having the data governance in cataloging and lineage.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, you previously we were talking about, and I'm gonna quote take that quote as it is about scale that you said when you're scaling and scale breaks everything. I had not heard that
Yeah, it's
quote.
not mine, it's Dr. Vogel. So,
Yeah.
let's.
Well, I'll quote. I'll say I'll heard from you, and then you quoted someone else. But that is a very profound thought. The thought that, hey, if something has breaks and scale breaks everything, it's also a good sign for you as a company to look and know that, hey, we are doing something right. That's why this is breaking. So there is a
Yeah.
positive outlook towards it. How are you designed for scale at Collibra? Like in the sense, like your infrastructure, is it running again on cloud, and how do you like tell me what you can without it's giving the secret sauce,
I
so
mean,
yeah.
I don't think there is necessarily a secret sauce per
Okay.
se. It's very much about philosophically, I think you need to prepare for success, but I really
Mm.
don't think that you need to prepare for success that is so far off that you're
Mm.
going to spend so much, preparing for that success that you're going to miss the train and you're going to have nothing. And I think this is a mistake that many startups do, especially now when there are all these patterns and everybody wants to be like Google. But you
Right.
go and you over design your MVP, and by the time you have it out, you have three other companies that have done it, and you're out of business and out of money. And I think this can be the case at every stage, right? I mean,
Right.
you think what's the next milestone, and you design for that plus, and you have a plan about, okay, if we reach there, what's our next step? How easy is for us to evolve and transform that? But I think it's also important to be very pragmatic and realize that nobody's going to wait for you forever, that these companies have needs and they have them now, and you have to constantly have that balance between speed and
Right.
scalability. Don't compromise on quality, don't compromise on security, don't compromise on reliability for the skill that you're set to have. But in terms of scaling, there are trade-offs.
Mm.
And in terms of even uptime and reliability, there are trade-offs, and you get to the point of diminishing returns. So I would say understand your business, understand what's important for the customers, understand how fast they are going to grow and how fast your fastest growing customer is growing,
Right.
and plan for, the next year, the next 2 years, but don't get crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do as I'm working with the engineering team at Collibra, to anticipate what's coming, but have that constant trade-off conversation between non-functionals and the need for features, and the reality that right now there is this big need that everyone has, is more important than anything else for us.
For sure, yeah. So you have to be customer user driven, but at the same time engineer in the right way so that you're not affecting the overall balance of things, right? So you kind of hinted a little bit, which I feel is also sort of like I was curious to know was, and now as a leader, as a CTO, what are your engineering philosophy that you bring to Calibra? Like you say it to your teams, like this, of course, you mentioned some, obviously, but are there others that you kind of encourage the team to kind of go after and do things in a certain way?
See, I kind of hinted at this. We have a very interesting mixed tech stack where we have cloud-enabled technologies. There was a
Mm.
bit of lift and shift that happened, and then evolution, and we continue to evolve. We have cloud-native part of our platform. What I'm trying to do on the engineering side is really just have these guiding principles in terms of architecture and technology, and say, hey, we need to be as much as possible 12 factor, because that's super important to our ability to be reliable and to be consistent and to be able to move really fast.
Right.
We need to go towards building stateless products and solutions, because that's how you're going to be able to auto scale, and that's how you're going to be able to have no downtime deployments and all these things that have become just table stakes as a SaaS provider. And
Got it.
then, I really think that we should innovate in our space. If we can buy it, we should buy it. I don't think we should reinvent the wheel. We are multi-cloud, which is a complexity.
Yeah.
At some point, we wanted to be cloud agnostic,
Right.
and that meant that almost everything needed to be built by us, right?
Mm.
Because you're saying, hey, if I'm cloud agnostic, I can deploy Collibra anywhere. Well, there is nothing that right now that I know of that works for everywhere,
Right.
right? So then we kind of said, hey, let's take a step back and recognize that we are not cloud agnostic, we are multi-cloud. There are these 3 4 big clouds, and we want to be able to be in those 3 clouds, so let's leverage managed services. So
Mm.
definitely, very intentional buy versus build where possible, so we can innovate in our space. And
Right.
then API first. No matter how beautiful you think your UI is, we are working in the enterprise space. There's going to be a company out there that wants their own UI on top of Collibra, and it shouldn't be that we get into the business of writing 20 different versions of our UI. Give them
Right.
API, they build it however they want it, right?
Very cool.
So definitely there are these guiding principles. But
Yeah.
in terms of engineering culture, um, I um, I think the team is more than the sum of the parts, and
Yeah.
I think having people who really are committed to what you're trying to do, who are uh, fair players, who really work together, who are honest, who love freedom and are worthy of freedom, it's a very important part of the culture that I want to build.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, you are like the right CTO here. Look at you mixing technology, experience, and great codes together. No, I'm really inspired by some of the things you're saying, right? Like, especially the idea of, where you brought up the idea that you have all these people working together and they need to be accountable to what you're trying to build. So one of the things I was curious to was like engineers have this habit to kind of go after certain things. They're like, hey, can we do this technology, can we do that technology? So there's always this thought process of R&D and research. So how do you encourage innovation, obviously, and R&D, but at the same time make sure that these are activities focused towards the product that you're building or the feature that you're building?
I mean, I think there is a need for some space to play. I think engineers need that, and I think no one has monopoly on the best idea. The best idea, the breakthrough idea, can come from anyone. And
Right.
if you don't create this play space, you might miss on really really big things out there. That's not to say that every idea and even every prototype becomes reality. So we have at Collibra something that we call Innovation Day. It's something like a 10% variation of Google's 20% with a bit of
Right.
structure around it. But we have these hacking days, and sometimes is okay. Let's fix the bugs. Let's fix our logs. Let's fix whatever is the problem that everyone is most cranky about. And then there are some like, okay, let's play with AI and let's see what comes out of it. Or there is this thing in our product that it's kind of anyone has any idea, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
In terms of new technologies, I again spikes happen. It's like there is this new thing you want to play, you want to try, you think is the right solution there, but we do have a process for introducing new technology, because
Mm.
again it has to make sense, and you have to think more than just like, is the right technology for solving my this tiny problem. It's like, okay, how are we going to deploy it, how are we going to support it, how often we need to patch it, who's going to keep an eye on it, who's going to
Yeah.
be getting the alarm at 3 a.m. and all that. And there has to be a really really good need for us to introduce something, and usually more than just one team needing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
And yeah, I wanted to go back while you were saying, right, like this whole idea, like you don't want people to wake up, right? And again, you also have this problem, who the right person should be, who should wake up. And that stems from what you were previously mentioning, because you have to have a cloud agnostic solution. That means you have to have somebody who understands GCP, somebody who understands AWS, and that's a different problem, right? Like we at Cockroach Labs, we have Cockroach DB, which is also cloud agnostic, and I've worked at another company before I came to Cockroach Labs, was also cloud agnostic. And one of the challenges always was, hey, who's the Microsoft guy who can help me with this problem that I'm seeing? And then we would, but you as a leader have to plan for situations like that, because you have to have a balance of the right engineers and right people, and hiring becomes a key aspect of that as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of discipline in making architectural choices, to remember that you can't just use everything that AWS has to offer, because you need to
Exactly.
have an equivalent solution in GCP and Azure. Or, in some cases, working with the government, they want it on-prem, right? So there are limitations in terms of what we can choose. In terms of, getting the call in the middle of the night, I don't think we have that much problem that has to do with differences between clouds, because we have uniform ways of deploying and monitoring, and just run books that are applicable irrespective of where a customer or a service is hosted. We haven't knocking wood right now. I'm going to jinx myself. Might have some weird problem that has to do with the cloud thing, but
Right.
we haven't had a lot of those.
What are you excited for as a CTO? What at Collibra? What are you guys building? Of course, you mentioned AI. What can we anticipate? What can people who use AI at Collibra anticipate, or just users of Collibra?
As a technologist, more than CTO or CTO of Collibra, I'm really very excited about the developments in AI.
Mm.
And even as a parent, right, I think so much is going to be different in 5 years. It's the how much has changed from December of 2022 until now. It's unbelievable. Like a lot
Yeah.
of the AI, and especially generative AI, was something that was the for academics, right? Like you had a bunch of PhD people looking and playing with it, and they were in their corner and nobody's looking at what they were doing. And right now it's everywhere. It's every person, even like non-technologists, they are playing with it and they are looking at it. And if you're thinking about just how fast it is adopted, and how much we've democratized this ideation space, and how many people can in fact leverage AI, is amazing. And I think engineering in 5 years, maybe less, is going to be very different. We already have Copilot that can code
Yeah.
as a C5 engineer, and can build test automation and do a whole bunch of stuff
Right.
adequately. So engineers need to learn how to do something else, or how to use AI differently to
Right.
differentiate themselves. Medicine, like you're probably going to go to a doctor, and the doctor is going to be a psychologist of sorts that is convincing you to follow your treatment plan and whatnot. Education.
Right.
Uh, we already see with Khan Academy just how amazing is to have personalized education where that AI assistant knows
Oh yeah.
where you're weak and it just gives you the right lesson plan. And so much is going to be different, and I find it fascinating as a technologist to see where we're going to be in a few years, given just
Oh yeah.
how fast we are moving right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm with you on that. I feel like the speed is like it's insane. I mean, I don't know if you know this. Yesterday, OpenAI released a new model, which is insanely good. It's called Sora, Sora. It does text to video, but it's so good that it can. I mean, I showed it to a bunch of my friends and say, "Hey, man, I shot this video. How do you feel about this?" And they were like, "Wow, this is really good." And then I told them after 5 minutes, it's AI generated, and they were like, "What?" It's insane. I mean, you should go check it out.
No, I haven't played with it. It's like I feel like it's this
Yeah,
one of the giants between Microsoft and Google. Each one of them kind of releasing new, trying to up
it's
themselves,
like
which
every
gets
day.
me to think it's going to be great. It's going to be great for all of us.
Yeah, I think yeah, I mean, Sora is not available. It's just videos that they had shared. I took that and shared it with somebody. But I'm with you on the fact that in the future, pretty much everybody that we know will have to adopt AI in some way in their workflow. Otherwise, they're going to be a little bit behind in terms of, because the world is moving way quickly. Like as you said, Copilot is become so important because you can like code something that would take you 6 hours. Of course, you know how to code, but just AI Copilot really helps you finish
Mm.
that in an hour or 1.5 hours, which is good for companies. A lot of
Right.
things. So it's exciting. Yeah.
I mean, it's more than that. I mean, let's say that you have a dependency on another team. Like, let's say
Mm.
you're a business analyst and you have a dependency of your data office and their data engineers, and you kind of go there and use uh, your AI of choice, the GPT of choice that your company has, and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
can I have some uh, Python code to do this?" And before you know it, your dependency, like, yeah,
It's
it's not
not
as
there.
good if a data engineer did it, but you're unblocked. You're not in a queue waiting for them forever.
True. That's a very good
Yeah.
point. I wanted to ask you one last question. Like, what's your advice to engineers who are on this path to leadership and CTO? Like, what are your things that you've learned from your career?
I mean, obviously, I didn't plan to be where I am, so I don't know exactly if my path is a
Ideal, yeah.
repeatable path. But I would say know why you're doing it, right? Like moving from engineer to manager requires a different skill set. You have to let go of a lot of things. You have to do work through others. You have to build skills. You have to let go of some skills. It's
Mhm.
a big transition, and you have to know why you're doing it and for what reason. What's your purpose? Is it selfish? Is it because you want to make more impact? All answers are valid,
Mhm.
but the paths might be different depending on what's your answer. Um, what I would say to technologies right now is that just prepare yourself for a journey where you're going to have to learn all the time. It was always the case. Technologies are changing so much. I feel like I've been through so many technologies myself in the many years that I've spent in software engineering. But right now is like amazing just
Right.
how much things are changing. So you're embarking as an individual contributor or as leader on a journey of continuous learning, and you should be prepared for that. And also, what I said that was the biggest differentiator for me, truly recognize that as a leader, your job is more than just creating a technology vision and executing on that technology vision. It's super important to explain it to the non-technical stakeholders in a way that they understand, because that's how you're going to get buy-in and that's how you're going to make those great things happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing. Have you ever considered writing a book in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, I always say that when I grow up, I want to be a writer for the New Yorker or something like
Yeah.
that. Um, and before I wanted to be an architect, I actually wanted to be a writer someday.
It's fascinating to know that you've chosen to do what you do from your journey that began somewhere in Bucharest, and you've brought such a joy to me talking about this a journey, and I'm super fascinated with what you and Collibra are going to do. Thank you so much, and we will catch you in the next one.
Thank you for having me.